Hey everybody, Lecrae here with the Christian Post. My guest today is Lecrae. He is a Grammy award-winning rapper, and for the first time in 3 years, he's releasing a brand new album called Reconstruction.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you.
You as well.
Listen, I'm so excited you finally are coming out with music. This is a long time coming.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It has been a minute. 3 years since the last album, so I'm grateful to put something out.
So, Reconstruction, why was it the time to put out this album? And what does Reconstruction mean to you? This is a pretty bold title. This title demands a reaction.
Yeah, I think it reconstruction is the idea that something has been rebuilt. And the foundation hasn't changed. My foundation has always been Christ, but some things had to be rebuilt. Why? Because some things were torn down. And people get scared when you talk about tearing things down. Um, but I think that's healthy, right? If your building has asbestos or mold, you got to tear some of those walls down. And there was some mold in my religious walls, some beliefs that were not healthy. And some of those had to get torn down, a lot of self-righteousness, a lot of church hurt, and I could not let that inform my walk with Jesus. And so those things had to be destroyed in order for me to reconstruct and be a healthier follower of Christ.
I mean, I love this topic. I think it's so interesting, but there's such a trend of people who grew up in church culture in like the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s who are now being like, whoa, a lot of that was problematic. And
Mm.
everybody reconstructs, right? Some deconstruct and never come back. Why do you think we're seeing so much of this right now?
Yeah, I think so. One of my views on it is that we're afraid of tinkering with things. We're afraid to be Thomas and doubt some things because it's safe. The reality is everyone comes to this awakening. Oh my God, Jesus is real, and that's a great phase of our journey. But the second phase of that journey is usually growth, and you're starting to read and learn and develop your mental maps. And then you go to productivity where you join the choir or you start serving in ministry. But then life hits us, right? We lose a friend, or maybe a divorce, something happens in our lives and we don't know what to do. So either we try to go back to what we did at the beginning, and those college Bible studies don't they're not going to work in this new complex world that you're wrestling with. So some people just throw the whole faith out. They say, well, this doesn't work. And I think the answer is doing inner work. The answer is saying, okay, Lord, there's something going on with me that needs to be worked out. And then we can come to the other side. It's when we start to see that Jesus had more to say than, love your neighbor. But we got to understand what love even means. And so I would just say that we can't throw away the Bible. We just may have to throw away some of the ways we interpreted the Bible, right? We may have had some bad interpretation of things that are not helpful for us as we move forward.
What do you think are some of the things in church culture right now that in 10, 20 years we're going to be like, whoa, that was not the gospel and that was problematic. And now we've got to deconstruct that.
Yeah, what's funny is most of the things that are and I that are heresy today become like standard tomorrow, right? Like once upon a time, you know, uh, it would have been heretical for you know the type of music that we're playing on Sundays to be played. It's like, well, this sounds like the world. This is not okay. Um, I would imagine if Paul walked into one of our churches now, he'd be like, "What the heck is this?" Like this just feels like a theatrical show, and 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 I guess that's not heresy per se, but what I will say is this: I think we'll look back and say we thought so much of what was important to us culturally was also biblical, and
Hmm.
it's not, right? So many things. So we'll say, just to nerd out a little bit, in Hebrews it says, "Do not forsake the fellowship." And we'll say, if I don't come to this building on Sundays, then I'm in sin. And that's not what the Bible's saying. The Bible is saying if you're disconnected from community, from the people of God, you're going down a dark path. A lot of people show up on Sundays in a 2,000 seat gathering and they never connect with a single person. It's not helpful for them. And I think the tradition of just going to a room on Sunday and sitting there, not having any relationships with people, can be heartbreaking and detrimental for us long term. We got to build relationships. We've got to be connected to folks. It's got to be more than just a Sunday occasion. And I think we'll look back and say, man, we just showed up to a building every week and we did not build any deeper relationships, and it didn't help us. It didn't grow us.
Oh, well, that's convicting. Ooh, I mean, you're spot on with that one. It's going to be interesting to see. It's funny because my mom would be like, "You can't wear a denim skirt to church because
Oh
that's
man.
much like jeans, right?"
Oh man. My mom too. No lipstick, no makeup. She couldn't play sports. Right? So it's like, hey, no sports. That's God doesn't want us doing those types of things. And you got to tear that stuff down. You got to just those walls are religious walls that need to come down, and relationship walls need to be built. And the best way I can say is, those hotels where the ballroom has a wall that can be like pulled in and pulled out. Like the faith is a little more like that. It's kind of like, hey, is this wrong or right, God? And God is saying it's not a wrong or right thing. It's a wise or unwise thing, right? Is this a wise thing or an unwise thing? Your spouse has done something that violates your covenant. Do you stay or go? It's not a right or wrong sometimes. Sometimes it's a wise or unwise. Is this a wise decision to stay? Is it a unwise decision? And that's kind of how some things are. And we got to be okay with that.
Okay, so for this album, you've got mainstream names like Killer Mike and T.I., but then you've also got Jackie Hill Perry, who's
Mhm.
propaganda, which is
Yeah.
cool. Talk about these collaborations and why you wanted to collaborate with both kind of sides of the aisle on this album.
Yeah. I wanted people who are, if you hear a Jackie Hill Perry or propaganda, you hear them as truth bearers, people who come to stick their flagpole in the ground and say, "This is thus says the Lord." And when you hear a Killer Mike and a Ti, you're hearing a conversation. You're hearing a conversation with me and people outside of our faith world about things that we have common ground on. So let's talk about parenting from your perspective, from mine. Let's talk about grief and losing people, which that song Headphones talks about. Let's have this conversation. And what we learn is that everyone goes through the same things. It's just that we as Christians should have a healthy perspective on how to navigate those things. And it's not us against the world, it should be us for them, right? We should want their healing and want their transformation. And so that's really the heartbeat of me doing those two worlds, just to show people that, man, I'm in the world, but I'm not of it. And I'll always reach over across the aisle to bring people over because that's what God has called me to do.
How do you find that balance though of reaching over and making sure, you don't fall in? Like talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah. Well, one, it's all about intention. You got to set your intentions at the beginning. Is my intention to be known, to be seen, to be validated over there, or is my intention to reach people? And I've been doing this so long, I just don't see celebrity. I don't see stardom. I just see humans. These are guys that I've known for probably 10 years now that I've had plenty conversations with. And it gets to a point where it's like, hey man, let's have this conversation in a song. Like we disagreed in public. Oh my goodness. We've sat and had, not in public, but in private, we've had tons of conversations where I'm like, that is crazy. Me and Killer Mike, you know, uh, 10 years ago, he said, oh, the church is just Christians are just, you know, right wing, uh, you know, uh, child molesting individuals. And I was like, that's, you're typecasting based off of a couple headlines. And so we've had to walk through that in conversation. And his son became a believer. And then he had to wrestle with some stuff with his son. Like, well, wait a minute. Is your son all those things you're saying? And so that has made the soil a lot softer. But all that to say, I don't, I tell people to come on my territory. I don't go on theirs. Jesus invited people to come dine with him. He was not going over there to go eat what they're eating. You didn't see him at the temple of Diana to go worship and present sacrifices, but he invited them to his home to eat with him. And that's all I'm doing. I'm inviting them over and saying, come eat with me.
You mentioned headphones. I want to talk a little bit about that because this is a really vulnerable song. You're talking about losing your cousin to fentanyl.
Hmm. Hmm.
What was it like turning such a painful moment into music? Talk a little bit about that process.
It was very hard. That was the uh, hardest loss I've ever had to deal with. Um, him and I are 3 days apart. We grew up like brothers, more than cousins. We were brothers. And he had just gotten clean. We had walked through this journey of him being clean. He loved the Lord. And he was like, we were talking, I was on tour. We were talking on the phone like consistently and just talking about his growth and what he wants to do. And he was working on becoming a chef and he was going through rehab. And man, he had one, moment of relapse and it cost him his life. And it just crushed me. It crushed me because we had plans and we were dreaming and I just saw a future for him. And so I had to go through the process of grief. And once I felt like I could do it, I wrote the song. The first time I played the song for anybody, it broke me, because I had to relive those moments. But I think it's from a real place because I know he's with the Lord. And I just wonder, man, what do you hear this? Do you see this? Do you know this? Did I say I love you enough? Did I say, and you're just hoping and wondering, did all those things make a difference and matter? And you're questioning, did I do enough? And so that's what the song wrestles through.
How do you decide what to share publicly and through your music and on your podcast and what to post? Because I think you are just so honest and you're so raw and you're so vulnerable on your
Yeah.
podcast, in your music, in your interviews. Talk about finding that balance and how you make those decisions.
Yeah. So one is I've had a lot of therapy. So biblical counselors who have walked me through stuff to where I there's a lot of healing. So I'm not talking about things that I have not experienced healing from. I'm not just triggering myself every time I talk about these things. These are things that I've walked through already, um, behind closed doors. And two, I want to make sure I'm not exposing anybody else, because some people are still traumatized and they're still processing certain things. And I don't want to bring up, so, I may talk about my cousin who's gone and the pain it's caused me, but I'm not going to talk about his mom or his kids, and what they may be wrestling with because that's their story to tell. Um, you may hear me talk about my shortcomings and my shortfalls in marriage. I'll never bring up my wife's. That's her story to tell. And so, that's kind of the tension that I carry with a lot of those things. Now, I've not done it perfectly, and I think it's a difference between being vulnerable and being transparent. Vulnerable leaves you open to be wounded. Transparent is saying, hey, this is what I'm comfortable telling you. And I've had to learn the difference. Don't be vulnerable if you're not prepared for someone to try to jab that. So I will never share anything that I feel like can be weaponized in a way that's going to hurt me. If I'm healed, it's more transparency than vulnerability. Now, to the outside world, it may be like, whoa, that's so much. But it's because I've been healed from it. So you can't really use that to hurt me. If I'm telling you about, the abortion that I paid for, you're not going to be able to weaponize that to hurt me. It's something I've healed from. And if you bring it back up, I'll be okay.
Yeah. Is there a track on Reconstruction that feels most personal to you right now? And
Mhm.
why?
It's probably Erase Me. That was a song that I wrestled with the most. I let a lot of people listen to it, featuring Holland, because I'm putting my views on the faith out there. And I didn't want to paint with a broad brush. You know, I articulate I've had some issues with kind of the mega church system, but I attend a church that has over 1,000 members. So I'm not saying I hate megachurch. Um, I said that, America has told us some lies about our faith, but then I also say I'm I still love my country and love my heritage. So it was a tough balance because I was like, man, am I painting too broad? Am I sharing too much? Is this going to cause tension? But some things I just felt like needed to be said, and in order for me to move forward, I have to say, hey, some of this stuff is unhealthy. The way that we've married politics to the Bible, and politics have co-opted biblical things for the sake of growing an empire, not growing the kingdom. The political world, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, does not care about building the kingdom of God. It has its own agenda. And I think we have to remember that before we get too deep in there. I'm not saying don't be involved. What I am saying is make sure that the kingdom is over the empire. And a lot of that is articulated in Erase Me.
Isn't that funny that that's such a controversial thing to say or believe when that's literally scriptural?
I know, I know. We're a sensitive bunch. We are a sensitive bunch.
We really are. Well, what I love about your album is you're inviting in both the skeptic and the believer. What do you
Mhm.
hope somebody who's wrestling with their faith hears when they press play? Maybe somebody who's in the process of deconstructing right now.
Yeah, I think I just couldn't find voices that had been through what I've been through. And I think that would have helped me so much. There just were I couldn't find a voice. The only voices I found spoke to me from the perspective of like, just trust Jesus. And when you say something like that, I have an idea of what that means, but you got to help me understand what that's looked like practically for you. Like what does that look like to just trust Jesus when you felt like he was untrustworthy? Like what does that feel like? What does that mean? And so I wanted to take people through that journey and let them know, hey, I'm sitting in this dirt with you. I'm not standing outside of the darkness. I'm in the darkness with you, and I know a way out. And if you just let walk with me, I promise you, I'll get you out of here. And that's really the journey I'm trying to take people on.
Yeah. Well, you've also been really active in community outreach with like back to school drives, and then you partnered with
Mhm.
Human Impact. So, how does serving off stage tie into the message of Reconstruction?
Yeah, I just think you got to walk the talk. You can't sit there and say, man, we want to reconstruct communities and reconstruct cities and rebuild and you can't say that if you're not doing it. It's just now it's cliche. It's just talk. It's theory. And I want people to get involved. This album is not for me, it's for other people. This is a very other-centered project. And so I wanted them to be involved. And if I'm not creating opportunities for them to get involved in the process, then they're just listening. So I was like, hey, let me give you some tangible ways to get involved. And so people see like, oh, this is for us. This isn't just him saying what he's this album is for us. Yes, it's for you. Come be healed and come heal others. So doing backpacks for kids, building kits for the unhoused, all that is to help people be mobilized to doing instead of just consuming.
How does
Mhm.
Reconstruction represent a new chapter for you artistically? I mean, 10 albums in, right?
Yeah, yeah. Reconstruction is is kind of like a stamp in the ground that says, "Hey, I'm a rebel again." I'm a rebel in the way that when I first came out and said, "And I'm unashamed of Jesus," I'm on that page now where I just don't care. I, I've just seen the healing work. I've seen the miracle of transformation and reconstruction, and I'm just very unapologetic right now. So, I, I'm way more confident. I think doubt only strengthens your faith. And so artistically, man, there's just so much in there that just needs to come out. And I can't wait. It's like I've got a different layer of wisdom that God has revealed to me that I want to give to people artistically.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more Christ-centered journalism.